Time. Ready to go? All right. Good morning again, and welcome. My name is Gary Blakely, and I'll be your MC today. I'm pleased to welcome those here in our community center and those joining us on Facebook Live to Kansas City Oasis. Since 2014, Oasis has been the premier secular alternative to faith-based communities. We welcome all, regardless of beliefs, non-belief, race, gender, sexual orientation, or any identity or any other trait. We feel that the human experience is better when it is shared, and we are so pleased that you have chosen to share it with us this morning. We gather around our 5 core values, which are: people are more important than beliefs, reality is known through reason, human hands solve human problems, meaning comes from making a difference, and be accepting and be accepted. Today's program, our featured speaker is David Fitzgerald, and the title of his presentation is Playing God, an Evolutionary History of World Religion. Our musical guests are Ernest James and the Zydeco Trio. Did I get that right? Yeah, yes. We like Zydeco here at Oasis. So. And our community moment will be Amy Vanderdrift. So, yes. And we will open that with the music. Ernest James Zydeco is the premier Zydeco band in the area who have shared their fun music nationally and internationally. You can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Reverb Nation, and Spotify. Please welcome back to KC Oasis, the Ernest James Zydeco Trio.
Thank you. Check 1, 2. All right. Oh, yeah, baby. It's time to wake on up. Stuck in a rut, but I need a groove. I wanna strut, Lord, I can't move. Well, you can kick the bucket, baby, but I'm alive. Oh, spark of fire, break away, high and high, Lord, day by day. Oh. Well, you can kick the bucket, baby, but I'm alive. Well, you can kick the bucket, baby, I'm alive. Oh, yes. Take it easy, baby, the cruise control. You can't be anybody else, you gotta own your soul. Oh, well, you can kick the bucket, baby, but I'm alive. Well, you can kick the bucket, baby, I'm alive. Well, you can kick, 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 kick. Stop, 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop, 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop, Lord, I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic now. Woo! But you can kick, 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 kick. Go on, kick, 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 kick. I said kick it, now kick it, now kick it, baby. I'm alive. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic now. Woo! I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop, Lord, I'm automatic. I can't stop, Lord. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic. I can't stop, Lord, I'm automatic. I can't stop 'cause I'm automatic now. My bad. Oh, yes. Is that better? I've been all around the world, climbed the highest mountain, and I dove for pearls. Sat with the king, begged with the fool. All I want, y'all, is to be with you. All that I want, all that I need. Shake it right now, sugary. And all that I want is to be with you. And that will fill me up instead of whole night through. It's just to see you dance, see you groove. Shake your pants, gon' get blue. And all that I want, all that I need. Shake it right now, sugary. All that I want, all that I need. Shake it right now, sugary. Shake it right now, sugary. Right now, sugary. Go, go, go. need. Shake it right now, sugary. All that I want, all that I need. Shake it right now, sugary. Right now, sugary. Oh, right now, sugary. Oh, come on.
That was great. You got definitely got the crowd riled up here. So, all right, they will be back to play again later in the program. You know, we don't have any official or birthdays officially on for today. However, Lindsay Doolittle's, she had a birthday last Friday, and there's a cake out here that we're going to cut at the coffee break. So it's her birthday cake, and she has a friend Cole. His birthday's today. So. Yeah. And for some reason, I'm always the MC when there are no birthdays show up, and so I look up celebrity birthdays. Today's birthday, Greg Lake, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, King Crimson, yeah, okay, and Richard Burton. Tomorrow, Veterans Day, this is appropriate, George Patton. The 12th, Tuesday, Neil Young. And this is what really motivated me to present celebrity birthdays today. Our very own Buck O'Neill is Wednesday the 13th, you know. Love that guy, love him. And the 14th, King Charles of England, that's his birthday. And the 15th, Georgia O'Keeffe, that's her birthday, so, all right. Enough of that. We want to remind you that plenty of our people volunteer with Micah Ministries. We serve hundreds of people a meal on Monday evenings from 5:15 to 7:15. They help anyone, regardless of race, gender, religious or non-religious affiliation, kind of like the way we welcome people here. Come join us in helping our less fortunate neighbors. Sign up on Micah Ministries' Facebook page or look for Al or Denise. After serving others, you go out to dinner with the team from Oasis. On Tuesday, join us for an evening of imagination, creativity, and camaraderie as we dive into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer or a complete beginner, this event is the perfect opportunity to build your ideal character from scratch. November 12th from 6 to 9 p.m. here in our community center. On Wednesday, November 13th, join fellow Oasians for Music Bingo, played on your phone. It's free, and they have happy hour all day. That's going to be at Gale's Public House. It's near 54th and Troost. I've done it before. It's fun. And Friday, November the 15th, we will host another Oasis 101. Come and learn the basics about Oasis, its founding and its philosophy, and engage in community discussion after a brief presentation. On Saturday, we are volunteering with Habitat for Humanity, but that team is already full, so we're not looking for any more volunteers there. Next Wednesday, November the 20th, join fellow Oasians for happy hour at East 40 Brewing in downtown Blue Springs. Sarah, that's not the place where we did karaoke before? No, okay, I made my karaoke debut there, so. All right, next Sunday, after Oasis, the KC Oasis Book Club will be discussing the book, The Measure. We will meet here after the Sunday program on November the 17th. Please be sure to, and this is important for the people that participate, be sure to have read the book before the meeting. So, that's appreciated by those who did read the book. Mark your calendar for Saturday, December the 21st. We'll be having a secular solstice event here with a potluck, music, singing, and more. We are partnering with Kansas City Rationality and Effective Altruism for this event. And that brings us to our community moment. Community moments are an opportunity for a member of our community to present on a topic of their choice during a Sunday gathering. Today, we will hear from Amy Vanderdrift, and the three words that describe her are aspiring, interesting, and curious, just like Albert Einstein. That's what he said about himself. And the warning would be, I can be a lot, I'm a work in progress. So, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you. I will now learn the clicker and look to those in the know for approval that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing correctly. Now I know that one. So thank you so much for having me here today. Excuse me. Thank you for the lovely introduction. It's tough to follow such a hot Zydeco band. I was super excited when I got into town a few weeks ago and flipped on the radio on a Friday night and heard them on the NPR. And I thought, this is going to be fun. I'm going to get to see them while I'm here. And the best part for me about coming here to Kansas City is the sense of community that I feel when I'm here. So when I thought about doing a community moment, of course I'm thinking a bit about my mom, who was an active member here for the last decade and loved being a part of this community. And for myself, I've been a community builder throughout my adult life. And so it's wonderful for me to see a community that grows with love and support for one another. I came here on Tuesday night. I needed to be in a safe space with like-minded people and to feel a sense of community. And that is what this group offers to me. It also offers wonderful sort of intellectual pursuits. I love the values. Meaning to me very much comes from making a difference. And so for myself, in thinking about today and reflecting upon it being a year since we memorialized my mom here, I wanted to really think about what all that meant. She had said to me once, please give yourself at least a year to reflect on things. Don't go tossing things out. Take time to go through my things. Take time to get to know my friends. That will be more important to you than you realize now. And it has been. I love these people so much. And it's not just because they knew and loved my mother and she loved them, but it's because of the hope it offers for all of us as we leave this building today and go share the values of this organization and our humanity with others. So I picked somewhat randomly a little collection of photos. This is obviously me. I live in the Netherlands, and this is a beautiful lilac mountain that's just nearby my house, somewhere I love to go and walk, and I make it a point every year at the right time of year to go there because sometimes they're quite fleeting. Just a little bit of rain and a few hot days and they'll all be gone. And as many of you know, I went through a cancer experience 7 years ago, and I remember and actually made a video with the last time when I went back there, the year after I thought maybe I'd never be there. And to be so moved to walk through, you walk around a circular path up to that little hut on the top. And it was wonderful to know I'm here again. And I didn't know I'd be there again, so that was wonderful. And here I am with you all again. So similarly, what a treat. And I picked just some random pictures so that you could get to know a little bit about me, too. This is my adult son, Nick. He and I both did graduate studies at Webster University in the Netherlands, and he was rowing in this special race one day, and so I got to come and watch him. And if you have adult children, you know the deal. It's just fun to be with them and do what they're doing. He celebrated his 10-year class reunion last night, however, so right now what he's doing is snoring, and I'm good with that. So this is my best girlfriend in the Netherlands, and you can tell she's a fun person. She teaches Dutch to young children at the American School of The Hague. I met her in 1988 when I first moved to the Netherlands. Hers was the first family that I visited their home and spent the night at a real house with real people. And that's always cool when you're in another country to get to visit any houses to see how people are and how they're living. And her mom was a teacher at the school and her dad was a principal, so I felt at home because my parents were both educators, and yet they were different. He was Dutch Reformed and Canadian. They had immigrated and then they found their way back to Holland. So super interesting and fun. And again, the same things that I love about this group. You keep me thinking, and I feel good and safe. I feel accepted, and I appreciate that. This is kind of fun. This is the hospital where I've spent more time than I'd probably like to have in life, but it can be very reflective. And this piece of art is just a fun piece of sculpture. It was around town in the university city of Leiden, which is nearby where we live. And throughout my last chemo treatment, and this was just last year, I would take pictures with the guy, and I often wore my Chiefs paraphernalia because it was reminding me that when I got through this, I was going to see the Chiefs play in Frankfurt with Nick. So that was my treat to myself a year ago, last November, the week before I came here to celebrate MK. And I knew that she would be so happy that the two of us made it there. And it was my first time to see Patrick Mahomes play, and that was kind of an honor and very fun to be there in Germany and with Nick again. He's not my only kid. This is my other kid. This is Grace. And my granddaughter, her name is Poppy. And that's my husband, Peter. So now you see all of us, like you've met the family. It's hard to fit all of us in the bed because Nick's really big. This is me at one of my favorite places, my happy place. I have a little home in France. It's a little teeny place. It fit on this stage. And that's the little shed out back, and there's a patio that's almost as big as the stage, and that's where we hang out. So I live a simple life in between the two places and enjoy that simplicity a lot. I learn more and more to travel lightly. I don't want to carry a lot of stuff, literally or figuratively, and so it's often important for me to stop and regroup, figure out, hey, what do I need and what do I not need? And I carry an awful lot, even when I'm trying to shed stuff. That's MK. For those of you who may not have had the pleasure of knowing MK, she was a character. She continues to be a character. For many of us who know her, she's very present in our lives every day. We see things that remind us of her. We hear things that remind us of her. We find ourselves in situations thinking, what would MK do? And you know what? That's an awesome meter. It's a fabulous meter because MK would find compassion, and she would stop and be quiet, be mindful, and find that centered place so that she was acting rather than reacting. I'm still in the mostly reacting kind of phase. And okay with that, I try to be patient with myself, but I do look to her as a source of inspiration. One of my words was that I aspire. Sometimes I'm not too sure to what I aspire, but I believe it's to find joy and beauty every day in little things. We never know if we have tomorrow. When I got diagnosed with cancer 7 years ago, I thought at the time and said at the time, I could have been hit by a tram on the way in this morning. It's all a bonus. And I just went through my 3rd cancer treatment for the breast cancer that I'm now getting hair back from. And again, every day is awesome for me. If I'm gone tomorrow, you all can celebrate, dance. And no, I had a hell of a run. And I had the great fortune of having over 60 years with MK Mustard. That's pretty fabulous. I love it that a few of her nice pieces of art were chosen to be here today. She's gifted these to the Oasis community, and they'll find a home here in the building eventually, I know, and I'm happy that they can be here. I'll just tell you a couple of things she loved in life. She loved museums, and she loved nature. And one of the things that she always liked to do when we traveled, because she really loved to travel and see new things and have new adventures, was to do museums. So although this one's local and was in the 1990s, I remember going to this exhibit with her and how much she loved it. So this is also her favorite color combo of this cool blue with the little yellow. This piece here is by Unterwasser, and it's a Buddha with a hat. He also has several eyes, so he's apparently all-knowing and most interesting. And she and I went to that exhibit in England in the 1980s. I've had a lot of fun going through her things. She liked to collect scarves. I have scarves from the openings of so many cool places. And yet I think, who's going to see them at my little tiny house down there in France or even in Holland? I'm not as exciting as I once was. This is my biggest crowd for a while. So because of that, I love to share her things. There's a table of stuff outside. I brought in a lot of scarves, little things. Please help yourself to anything you'd like for yourself or to take and give to someone else. I always enjoy sharing whatever's around. So, and I picked this picture from Virginia. It's from last year, and Mama and I would usually drive to North Carolina in the spring when I would come and visit. And this is from our trip last year. We had a wonderful trip. And just 2 weeks ago, I met my brother in Virginia, and we scattered some of my mom's ashes. I didn't even know he was going to have some with him, but it was wonderful. We went to a beautiful art museum on the hill above Abingdon, Virginia, and it was very moving for me to realize her people came from Virginia, from the coal mines, and I always had this affinity for the Waltons. I'm probably dating myself, but if you know the Waltons, you might know why I love it. And I had that sense in Virginia again, too. It's the most beautiful state, and it was wonderful to be there with Mama, whether it was the spring or the fall, which she really, really loved. It was nice to be there, and to be able to scatter her ashes, in some of them in Virginia a few weeks ago, was really moving for me. And I also got to see a very cool art exhibit. It was very exciting. I hadn't planned or expected any of that, but it was an MK kind of adventure, so I really liked that. Let's see what I've got up here next. Oh, this is so you can know these are my Dutch people. My mom loved my Dutch family. When I was so ill and it was hard for her to be far away from me, she always said what made it all okay was that she knew that there were people there that loved me and were taking care of me too. My husband's the mildly dressed dude on the right, and his 2 sisters, and then my brother-in-law in the middle. And he has the famous oliebollen. You'll hear about oliebollen if you ever think Dutch things, because we have those at New Year's, and they're like fritters. They're awesome. This is me outside the Aldi. This is me just shopping for my groceries. And this is Peter playing St. Nicholas with the 2 children and me. I have a daycare center, an international community center in the Netherlands, and he won't play Sint this year, but he did for 25 to 30 years. So it's very nice that we have many years of these memories. And that was important to MK too. It meant so much to her to have been there, to have visited the places that were important to us, and to know the people that mattered to us. And for me, of course, I find that here. I chose this picture to remind me that how much, for me, meaning comes from making a difference. These are 2 young women who were Girl Scouts in my Girl Scout troops when they were in 4th and 5th grade. And they remind me of how nice it is to make a difference. I went and had lunch with one of my Girl Scouts a few weeks ago, met her children, and she's in the Block School of Business and has 4 children. And it was nice to meet her because I realized for me that is what my life means. And that's how it was for my mom as well. Having been a teacher for her career and then social worker and then a proud crone who wanted nothing more than to support younger people, to support especially the young women, but also the young men. And that meant so much to her to know how much she was valued here among all of you. So this one is fun for me. I picked it because the balloons look like I do, or I look like the balloons. But that's me, and that's where I live. That is our school in the Netherlands. It's called the Clown Club. Not really the smartest business decision I ever made, but it's fun. And I mean, in that regard, it's okay. And the thing is, I started an international community center, and I started it knowing I would have a children's center within it, and it didn't take long for the children's center to take over. And when we started 30 years ago, we needed those English classes and those Dutch classes and the things that brought the international community together. But now what's nice is it's about the kids, and the parents get the support online more than anywhere else nowadays, as many of us do, which is cool, but it's also so nice to meet humans in the flesh. So there she is, folks, MK Mustard. I love seeing her face. She loved those glasses. She also liked wearing interesting necklaces. I wear today one in memory of her that her sister-in-law made, and many of us contributed beads for, so that it could be a collection from several of us in the family and her Buddhist Sangha at the time. And so many people, some of whom are here today, but everyone who would certainly remember how meaningful that is. And if you knew her, you knew how she liked to entertain, and she had that beautiful set of dishes there that she had gotten at Hall's back in the 70s, and they're just beautiful. And they're now with my best friend of nearly 50 years in New Mexico, where they fit in so beautifully in her gorgeous adobe. And she sent me home this trip with this Mickey Mouse shirt, which is a fun sort of tribute to her today too. And of course, she was my best friend at age 14. We drove my mom nuts. So she taught me a lot of good lessons in life. I've posted this article on her Facebook page, which we have kept alive, and you're welcome to post things. I love it when people do. And that's a great article you can read. This is what I choose to close with today. Some of you probably saw it this week. Some of our friends shared it. I don't want to ignore the elephant in the room. MK was fiercely political. I was raised knowing there was nothing more important than looking out for everyone around you. And so for her, this would have been one of the most difficult weeks of her existence. But she would have gone back into that little cocoon and said, okay, we have to regroup. And as our friend Andy told us this week, maybe even attached, it was on a different one, but a similar one. We don't lie down, we don't take it. We get up, we regroup. And another friend from this group, Jeff Carey, I noticed this week, said he feared moving into some dark times, but knew that how we get through all that is we hold hands. We are reminded of our community and the moments that bring us together as community. And I know for MK that she would want us all to know the world needs us. The world needs good humans. So we need to all believe in the good. And that's the best way to carry on her legacy, is to make a difference. Do something nice for someone today, and do nice things for yourself. We have to take care of ourselves in order to be able to help others. In closing, I just want to give you my greatest thanks for allowing me to be here today and to be part of your community. I wish everyone here well, and thank you again to the wonderful musicians. MK loved them very much. So, cheers. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I would have to say that this community is more important than ever, given what's happened this week. And I think your mother really exhibited what Oasis is about. a very good example of that. So, as far as supporting each other, one thing I wanted to mention, we don't have it on the slide here, but Denise Johnson had surgery on her foot, so be thinking about her. All right, we are going to have some more music. We're going to bring the music in now and then do our coffee break. We're changing up the order here a little bit. We won't be closing with music, but our program's going to be a good one, and it's going to be a little bit longer than usual. So take it away, guys.
Look at here, mama, no, no, no. It's your little boy up on the stage. Hey, mama. Oh, tell me why. Hey, mama. Tell me why. Tell me why, mama, no, no, no. Why you left me out in the cold to cry. Oh, why, Lord. Zydeco music and a Creole too. Oh, puts a rock in my rock and roll. Yeah, you're right. Well, I ain't got no mama, no, no, no. Who's gonna rock me all night long? Hey, mama. Oh, tell me why. Hey, mama. Tell me why. Tell me why, mama, no, no, no. Why you left me out in the cold to cry? Hey! I got a sweet little girl, sweet little country girl. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. And Lucille is her name. Oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Why you gonna make me cry? Well, it was on a Tuesday night. I said it was a Tuesday night, John. Baby, I saw you walking hand in hand with another man. Whoa, Lucille. Whoa, oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Why you gonna make me cry? Well, on a Tuesday night, y'all, baby, I'm gonna get you. Oh, 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 I'm gonna make you cry. Oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, 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 keep it right like that, y'all. Whoa, oh, 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 keep it right like that, y'all. Oh, oh, oh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Why you gonna make me cry? Do, do, do. Give it all I get, y'all. Oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, Lucille. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Why you gonna make me cry?
All right. Hey, before Before you step away from the microphone, I know this style of music is very Cajun in Louisiana, but I don't know what's the name Zydeco come from? What is that?
Zydeco music is like the sister of Cajun music. It comes out of Southwest Louisiana. It comes out of the people of color, the African American culture in Southwest Louisiana, Creole culture. And Zydeco music is often confused with Cajun music. Typically, the Cajuns are the white folks down there, and the Creoles are the African Americans. And they originated Zydeco music.
See, we needed
comes
to
from
know
French.
That. We needed to know that. Yeah.
Zydeco sont pas salés.
Yeah.
Snap beans ain't salty.
Okay. All right. Well, that brings us to our coffee break. We're going to take a 20-minute break, get some coffee, and remember, there's a birthday cake back there, and maybe a few donuts left over. So we'll see you back in about 20 minutes. It's a reference to the poppy flower that a lot of Brits will be wearing today. So, Poppy Day today in Britain and Veterans Day tomorrow. So, that brings us to our featured speaker, and this is very important. Our program is designed to generate conversation and engage our powers of reason, not as a forum to start debates. The following presentation has been prepared by our speaker and not by KC Oasis. Please respect the views of our speaker, and if you have any questions, a Q&A portion will follow. All right. David Fitzgerald. He will share the most exciting recent scholarly findings in the field of global religious history. David is a historical researcher and author of Nailed and the Complete Heretics Guide to Western Religion series, including Jesus, Mything in Action, and Playing God. His books are available for purchase today. So please welcome David Fitzgerald.
Woo. Thank you. Let's see if the mic's working. It is working. Hey, just give us a minute here, and we're going to check this into make this go. Thanks so much for having me out here. There's a bit of a short notice for me to spring that I was going to be in Kansas this month. I'm really super grateful to Oasis for being able to make room in the schedule for me. And I'm delighted to be here again. How many of you were here when I spoke last time at the old about Lee Strobel and what a big fat liar he is? Yeah. Excellent. I think, here we go. All right. Thank you, Terry. Whoop, that's not what I'm seeing. How we switch it over? No worries. How's everybody doing today? I'm so knocked out to see so many people here today. It's amazing, the size of the crowd. And especially after the last 72 hours, I did not expect to see so much energy and excitement and happiness, and it warms my heart. And I think that's what it's going to get us through the next 4 years, or less, or 20, yeah.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. In just a moment.
No worries.
Hit the wrong button.
It's all right.
There we go.
I'd like to start out this talk by saying, now nothing I'm really going to be talking about today is that important, because I'm going to be talking about religion. And this whole talk is basically a very, very short, quick and dirty introduction to the new book that's out, Playing God, An Evolutionary History of World Religion, which is coincidentally available out front. So here's the thing about religion. All our world religions sound so differently. Their theology, their art, their architecture, their rules, their morals, their music, everything about them is their own universe. But when you actually look at their origins and you look at their evolution and development, take that big picture and zoom out, they all of a sudden start to look exactly alike. And so do their founder figures. So here's the thing. We know that none of the world's gods exist. That's not special. But when it comes to the founder figures of all these world religions, your Moseses, your Jesuses, your Mohammeds, etc., the general consensus seems to be that they were real historical figures. But is it possible that some of them, if not all of them, are just as imaginary as their gods? Now again, arguably, it doesn't matter. As atheists, it's not going to be as if Christianity suddenly makes sense if there really was another failed apocalyptic prophet running around first century Gallery. It won't make reincarnation any more real if there was a real Buddha preaching it way back in the day. The question is, what's our evidence for these guys, and how well does it support any of them? Now, maybe most of you know me for being a Jesus mythicist, arguing that Jesus never actually existed. And now, that said, not that I'm dogmatic about it. If evidence switched over it's no skin off my nose whether there was a real Jesus or not. None of these figures I'm going to talk about today have to be mythical. There's nothing improbable about any of them being historical, but the closer we look at it, the less it looks like that is the case. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So ever since I wrote my first mythicist book, Nailed, one of the weirdest side effects of looking into the historical Jesus question was being at conferences and having Buddhists come up to me and saying, oh, that's funny, we're having the same discussions in our circles on whether the Buddha existed at all, which is funny. And then ex-Muslims would start coming up to me and saying, hey, it's funny, we're having the same discussions in our circle whether Muhammad really existed or not. And that blew my mind until they started saying, yeah, because this. And I thought, oh, okay, he's starting to sound a lot more like Jesus when you put it that way. And to be honest, the historical Buddha always seemed a little dodgy for starters. But I mean, we've got family trees for Muhammad. All the first caliphs are related or friends and family to Muhammad. So to hear that there's any doubts really blew my mind. And so back in 2021, I want to say, while I was prepping for some other presentations, I thought it might be a good idea to just look into whether any of the other major world figures had problems and uncertainties about their founder figures. And so I just kind of kicked the tires on all of them. And how many do you think repeated that pattern? Only every single one of them at all. And so long story short, that's why we're here talking about playing God. So I'm kind of trying to buzz through this talk a little faster than normal. So I'm not going to break down all this stuff. And really the main thing you want to know is that the most commonality that we see is that scholars of this particular religious figure not generally always insist that, despite everything I've just told you, surely he really did exist. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Moses or Zarathustra or the earliest Jains, they all tend to think there had to have been a guy who started it. I've also found out that followers of a religion really, really hate it when you look into the backstory of their religious founder figures. So let's just jump right in and start with Judaism. So this has been a really exciting couple of years for atheist Bible fans like myself. The Hebrew Bible has been getting younger and younger. Biblical historians used to take it as a given that the Exodus was more or less a historical event sometime around maybe the 16th, maybe the 13th century BCE, sometime that Moses was a real person and the author of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. But over time, all 3 of these claims have come into serious doubt, even among religious scholars. And increasingly, the authorship of the 5 books of Moses has been dated later and later and later. From the time of the Exodus, and then the Exodus itself came into doubt, to the time of the United Monarchy, and then the idea of a United Monarchy came into doubt, and into the Babylonian captivity, the post-exilic period, and most recently, in the last 3 years, arguments from scholars like Russell Gurmerkin, and I know some of you know him, have been making the argument that it's clear that these things date to the post-Hellenistic time. In fact, he's pinned it down for the first 5 books of Moses to the year 273 or 272 in Alexandria, Egypt. That's what a bead we have on this. Increasingly, scholars like Thomas Thompson, Philip Davies, Mario Liverani, Francesca Stavrakopoulou, John Barton, and many, many others, as well as discoveries like what's called the Elephantine Papyri, they've shown that ancient Judah and Israel and ancient Jewish religion were very different from the biblical image we get in the Bible. And we also know that several Bible books are partial or total forgery, like Daniel, like 2nd Isaiah, 3rd Isaiah, Jeremiah, Micah, etc. And for instance, we have far better archaeological evidence that in the 7th century BC, Israelites' homes, guess what the number 1 archaeological find from that century is? It's not from Solomon's temple, it's not from David's palace, it is goddess figurines. Hundreds of them, by far the number 1 thing we find in the 7th century. And despite claims to the contrary, David and Kingdom's Solomons were supposed to have been in the 10th century BC. Now, I'm not saying there's no evidence for them, but what evidence we do have fits in a shoebox, and none of it is conclusive. All of it's very dubious, very questionable. So if there was a real David and Solomon, and to be honest with you, I don't think there was at all. But if there were, the figures, we would not recognize them from their depiction in the Bible. We wouldn't recognize the kingdom, the setting for their stories in there either. In fact, it's not until the 9th century BC, a century after the supposed time of David and Solomon, that we actually get evidence from other historical sources outside Judea and Israel that corroborate people in the Bible. And that said, everybody we know and love in the Bible, from Adam and Eve, which are clearly myth, to Abraham to Solomon, all those guys we love, it looks like none of those guys really existed at all. But ironically, Jezebel, the most hated woman in the Bible, yeah, she was a real person, and they totally gave her a hatchet job. And we have evidence for that whole dynasty starting, again, about 100 years after the time of David and Solomon, quote unquote. And that's the earliest kings that make the scene in the contemporary record. And now these elephantine papyri I just mentioned a moment ago, what they are is 100 years of correspondence from this Jewish colony that was in Upper Egypt. And this was from the 5th century BC. And what we learn from this, and it's court records, it's correspondence, it's you name it, it's over a century's worth of writings from this Jewish group. What we learn is there was a group there that had their own temple, who worshiped their own version of Yahweh, his wife, and 3 other guys at least. And there's other names that are probably just titles of them, but they may be separate gods in their own right. But we know at least 5 different gods were being worshiped there in their own temple. What's more than that, they show absolutely no knowledge of Torah law, of David or Solomon, of the Exodus, of the conquest, of 12 tribes, of the Torah. We get them deferring to the temple in Jerusalem. And again, this is at a time when there's only supposed to be the one true temple, and everything else was wiped out long ago to clear out paganism. But this temple in Jerusalem that worships these 5 gods, including this version of Yahweh, is on great terms with the Jerusalem temple. They do what they say, and all the rulings they follow come down from the priests. But they don't come down from the Torah. They don't come from Mosaic law. They are just rulings from the priest in Jerusalem. And we've always thought that these were like some mutant spin-off. I certainly did when I first heard about these guys. It's like, oh, they must be land that time forgot sort of situation. It's like, nope, they're in great terms with them. And we can talk more about that, but I'm going to keep going. This man, Russell Gmirkin, wrote a book called Berosus in Genesis, Manetho, and Exodus. And what he's the one who really pinned down that, we've got literary evidence for these books, but we don't have any evidence for it before the year 272, 73. And what's more, there's these books, there's a Babylonian named Berosus and an Egyptian named Manetho who wrote a Babylonian history and an Egyptian history. And we've known about these for well over a century or more. People have been aware of it, and they've always assumed that these are just Babylonian and Egyptian takes on our familiar Bible stories. But it turns out both these books are about 10 to 8 years older than our oldest literary evidence for the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And our first 5 books of the Bible, Russell Gmirkin's pointed out, it's not dependent on just Babylonian myth in general. It's dependent on these versions that we get in Berosus's book. The Moses story we have is a direct reaction to the story that Manetho gives us. Thank you, slideshow. Let's keep up. Okay. Yeah, and the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures that was made in Alexandria around the year, in the 2nd century, 3rd century. He argues it's 272, 273. But what he really blows my mind is he says, and it's not just they made a Greek translation, that appears to be when they wrote those first 5 books of the Bible, is that from these Jewish scholars in ancient Alexandria. And they seem to be the same guys who made the Septuagint were the same guys who actually began to compile the Bible in the first place. So, and these were big claims. And then in the fall of 2022, Tel Aviv archaeologist Yonatan Adler made this bombshell announcement that's rocking Israeli antiquities right now. And it dovetails exactly with what Gmerkin is saying. He's saying, archaeologically, we have no evidence for the practices of Judaism before this 3rd century BCE. Completely dovetails with what Gmerkin's arguing. And this means that Judaism, as we know it, is 1,000 years or more younger than we ever thought. Yeah, so again, there's a lot to go through here, but I'm not going to go too much of a deep dive. I want to say that virtually all of the Old Testament stories we love turn out to be untrue, and when they give us a true story, at least true people, genuine historical events and people, they give us this untrustworthy propaganda spin on it. So really the only thing we can trust about them is that they've got the names right of these people. But the original Hebrews didn't come from Ur, the Chaldees. There was no exodus from Egypt. There was no conquest of Canaan. The Hebrews were Canaanites. There was a Babylonian conquest and a return from exile, but very little of the Bible's versions of them can be trusted. And in fact, I talk about the Ezra-Nehemiah story in there. It's hilarious when you look closely at the story and try to take it at face value. I trust me on that. It's just reading it, I was constantly cracking up by just how ridiculous it is. And biblical scholars know this. That's the funny thing. Now, same with the first and second Maccabees. They're not part of our Bible, but they are in the Apocrypha. And it seems like those stories are also just as made up to serve the dynasty that gave us King Herod. It was their founding myth. So the fact that Judaism has been weighed and found wanting doesn't bode well for its spin-off religions, but let's look at them anyway. All right, when it comes to Christianity, I've already written 4 books on the subject of where I think, Jesus is probably not a real guy. So I don't want to belabor the point, but let's just focus on these 3. I don't think Jesus existed at all, and we could spend easily all night unpacking that, and I've been doing it for 25 plus years now. But to keep it short, I'll just point out a few things. If you don't already think that Jesus was the crucified Son of God who rose from the dead and now lives in heaven, you're already bucking the consensus of biblical scholars, at least the majority of biblical scholars. And if we ignore the religious biblical scholars and just go with the secular biblical scholars, despite all the ongoing debate between the historicists and the mythicists, we agree on a lot more than we disagree. And that's something to keep in mind. On all these issues and on more, we are lockstep with the mythicists. We just take it just a little further. Now, Bart Ehrman, I'm sure all of you know Bart Ehrman. I love Bart Ehrman. He's sure there was a Jesus, and he wrote, "Did Jesus exist?" And yet, everything he's written in all these books on here and more demolish that Jesus that he says surely must have existed. I recently was asked to review his debate that he did with Craig Evans, and Robert Stewart, another fundamentalist, actually edited the book. So really, it's almost like a debate of 2 people once you get his editor's marks in there. And he crushes both of them. But not only that, on the subject of can we trust the Bible for the historical Jesus, when I was reading this, it sounded like I was debating these guys because he was saying the exact same things I would have said in that situation. And again, he crushed it. So it's fair to say that wherever you land on the Jesus historicity issue, we can all agree that those Gospels stories about him are myths, whether there's a real person at the bottom of it or not. Robert Price says, and I love this, it means that for all intents and purposes, even if there was a real Jesus, and that's a big if, there might as well not be one anymore, because everything we know about him comes from sources that have nothing to do with anybody who really lived in the first century. And again, we can talk about that all night and talk about that more afterwards. And these lovely books talk all about that. All right, let's jump into Paul. Now, a lot of people let's go to John the Baptist. Okay. Initially, John the Baptist wasn't even part of Christianity at all, full stop. He was the Messiah of a rival movement of his own. It's possible Christianity was even a spinoff from the John the Baptist movement. But at some point, it was folded into Christianity. And if that surprises you, and it sure surprised me years ago, it means the evangelists who wrote the Gospels did their job. There's also reasons to doubt that John the Baptist existed. But if I had to put money on just one, it would be on John the Baptist. Not that he's got a lot of great evidence, but he's got a little more evidence, and it's better than Jesus. And some of the evidence includes the fact that he shows up in all 4 Gospels. Luke's Gospel begins with a story of John the Baptist that's clearly taken from John the Baptist scriptures, not ours, because the elements that are about Jesus are slipped in, and when you take them out, the story makes more sense. But let's jump on to Paul, because we got to keep moving. We got too much to talk about. All right, now, so there's some archaeological evidence, but it turns out to be Byzantine. Let's talk about Paul. Unlike Jesus and his apostles, and with the possible exception of the Jerusalem church leaders, whose names became listed as Jesus' friends and family, St. Paul was a real person. He certainly seems to be. And unlike Jesus, we have 13 writings that claim to be written by him, and about half of them are forged in his name. So we already have better grounds just from that alone to say that there was a historical guy at the core. And over half the books of Acts is dedicated to Paul's life and career, and he's also mentioned by other early Christian writers. The only problem with Paul is that there's more than one of him. And in fact, there are 4 different Pauls in our New Testament alone, and each one's quite distinct from the others. Again, we know many letters were forged in his name. In fact, most of the letters that are attributed to him are forgeries. There's 2 widely recognized sets of that, the Deutero-Paulines, 2 Thessalonians, Ephesians, and Colossians, and the Pseudo-Paulines, or the pastorals. Pastors like to say that better than Pseudo-Paulines, 1st, 2nd Timothy, and Titus. And then there's the miracle-working Paul, Super Paul in the book of Acts that everybody loves. But unfortunately, whenever the book of Acts and Paul's genuine letters overlap, they completely contradict each other. So at the end of the day, there really is a real Paul. It's just the one that we don't like. It's the bitchy, peevish Paul that's not crazy about girls, and he's constantly swearing, I'm not lying to you at all. Which means that Paul's like half mythical. There's the real disappointing and all too human Paul from his genuine letters, and the legendary Super Paul invented for the book of Acts. All right, everyone's favorite religion, Islam. Now, at the same time that Christianity and Judaism's origins have come under unprecedented scrutiny, so is that of their baby sister, Islam. And in recent years, archaeology and historical findings threaten to overturn everything we used to think we knew about the rise of Islam. Well, here's what we all know. Okay, in the 7th century, Muhammad claimed to have a vision from the angel Gabriel. He was a wealthy merchant from the great city of Mecca, which was the hub of an extensive Arab trade network. Mecca was also the pilgrimage site for all the pagan polytheists all across Arabia. But when he started preaching his new religion, he soon clashed with his very own relatives, the powerful Quraysh clan, and his followers fled to Medina. And from that city, he and his new faith miraculously spread like wildfire. He united the Arab tribes. He drove out the heathen paganism, and against overwhelming odds, he conquered both the Byzantine Empire and the Persian superpowers. Let's pause for just a moment, because that's a big sign, because every single fact in that is completely untrue. Archaeology has shown that in his time, the early 7th century, Mecca was not a city at all. It was a village of about 70 goat herders. And Medina was a scattered oasis of feuding date farmers. Neither were pilgrimage sites, nor were there any pagans by the 7th century. That was ancient times. And all the arguments against pagans in the Quran seem to actually be aimed against Christians, Jews, and other monotheists. Now, Muhammad's family, the Quraysh clan, were said to be both pagans and faithful monotheists who followed Abraham, and were said to be both long-distance caravan traders and the stay-at-home guardians of Mecca's shrine. But by Muhammad's time, there was no overland trade network. It had long been replaced by sea travel, and both Mecca and Medina were days away from the closest port, and they were pathetic little desert settlements with nothing to trade and no evidence of any trading. And in fact, it's not until after a century or more after the prophet's death that even the word Quraysh makes its first fleeting appearance outside the Quran. And that's in the final line of a text fragment from the mid-8th century. And even then, it's not entirely clear from the context what the word Quraysh means in this text. And in the Quran, the only single place where the word Quraysh does appear seems to be a later addition. And what's more, Quraysh doesn't appear to be a family name from the get-go. Muslim scholars argue that, well, it's actually a term for a group or a coalition, not a clan. And yet, anyway, despite all that, especially after the 13th century, many Muslims seem to have remembered, oh, yeah, we had a Meccan ancestor from the early 7th century, and changed their name to Qurayshi to improve their status. And then there's the Quran itself. Now, Francis Donner says, those of us who study Islam's origins have to admit collectively that we simply do not know some very basic things about the Quran, things that are so basic that the knowledge of it is usually taken for granted by scholars of other religious texts. There are excellent grounds to suspect that the Quran itself is not the work of a single person, but developed from several different separate texts over the 7th and 8th centuries, from sources both before and after Muhammad's life. Its real origins are obscure, and infamously, its content is baffling and completely unintelligible, even to Muslim scholars today. And it's not a small amount. It amounts to about 10 printed pages all total that they have no idea what these words mean at all, and no agreement on what they mean. As Gerd Puen points out, if you look at it, you'll notice that every fifth sentence or so simply doesn't make sense. Many Muslims and Orientalists will tell you otherwise, of course, but the fact is that a fifth of the Quranic text is just incomprehensible. Even the Quran itself admits this as much, and that it was a problem that invited challenges to its own authority. Now, there's no miracle needed either to explain how the Arab Empire arose, because Arabia was long caught between these two battling superpowers, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Byzantium Empire. The Sassanid Empire of Persia. And for centuries, these two empires fought each other, and both sides also competed for influence in Arabia. So in turn, feuding Arab tribes sought the patronage of one or more, or went back and forth, to bolster their own ambitions. Now, all this changed by the 7th century, when this endless and escalating series of war between Byzantium and Persia, not to mention a horrific outbreak of bubonic plague, left finally both giants exhausted and greatly weakened, ripe to be taken down by their Arab client states. So the Arab conquests of the 7th and 8th century are well established and undeniable, but the same can't be said about the prophet or the new religion that supposedly inspired all this. There's all these curious inconsistencies in the story, because early accounts by conquered people don't mention Islam, they don't mention Muhammad or the Quran. The Arab conquerors are called Ishmaelites, Saracens, Muhajirin, immigrants, Hagarians, but they're never called Muslims. And early mentions of Muhammad are oddly nonspecific and don't seem to be talking about our Muhammad. And at least twice on coinage, mentions of Muhammad are accompanied by a cross. Now, even though the earliest rulers are all supposed to be Muhammad's closest friends and family, our wealth of biographical material that we have now about the prophet's life dates at the earliest from about 2 centuries after he is supposed to have lived. By the year 800, Muhammad is the supreme example for all Muslims to follow. No one listens to you unless the prophet said it first. But for the first half century, and maybe more, maybe like 60 to 80 years, there's a total glaring absence of Muhammad until the reign of this guy. This is not their actual pictures. I was disappointed to find out. These are just random guys. But Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan and al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, his governor, these guys, more than anybody else, seem to have been the creation of what we think of as Islam. So it's very interesting. Okay, I'm jumping ahead. Let's slow down, Dave. Okay, like the word Jesus, like the name David, the name/word Muhammad is not just a proper name, but an honorific title. It means the praised one. And it's entirely possible that it originally was referring to Jesus or some other prophet, Now, what other prophets could that have been? Well, as it turns out, there's all these early Arab prophets from the so-called War of Apostasies, and they claim that they were Johnny-come-latelys who rebelled against it. But we've got all these guys by name who were also prophesying in that period. We only hear about it from the conquerors, but we'll never know what their story was. But just the point being, we have options. So it's very interesting to see specialists in Islam insist that there was undoubtedly a Muhammad, or at least some prophet just like him, but then they turn around and they thoroughly deconstruct everything Muslims think they know about him until there's nothing remotely recognizable. And as I say in the book, when his backstory has been so thoroughly dismantled, what does it even mean to say that he certainly must have existed? Yeah, incredible as it seems, Islam appears to be the result, not the cause of the Arab conquest and empire. So that's the Western religions. Then we've got on the Eastern side, the Buddhist tradition. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, they've had a more detached stance on the historicity of their founder figure. And it's not as controversial for Buddhists to say there was no Buddha. In fact, even asking the question if there was a Buddha strikes most Buddhists as a very un-Buddhist thing to do. But Buddha is meant to have been Prince Siddhartha Gautama. And in influential scriptures like the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha himself calls his own historical authenticity into question. Now, scholars nowadays are careful not to put too much confidence in any one of the professed historical facts of Buddha's life, and even trying to establish even a ballpark figure of when he lived with any degree of confidence is proven to be deeply problematic. Many scholars tend to place him around the 6th or 5th century BCE. Tibetans put his death in the 9th century BC. Eastern Buddhists like China, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan believe he died over a century earlier than that. But in any case, it was not until the early 2nd century AD/CE, if you will, or roughly half a millennium after the Buddha's life, according to scholars, that the first biography of Buddha was written in the form of an epic poem called the Buddha Karita. And again, this is like the 2nd century AD. According to tradition, the Buddha's teachings were only transmitted orally for several centuries, and by the time the earliest Buddhist scriptures actually appear, we already have large numbers of rival Buddhist schools that existed, each with their own competing collections of Buddha's teaching, and they do not play well together at all. Now, virtually all these early scriptures have been lost, though some have been partially reconstructed through translations in the Chinese, Korean, and Tibetan. But our surviving reconstructed canons differ from each other so greatly that scholars today are unable to tell us which of them, if any, represents the original, authentic Buddhist scriptures. Now, Taoism, spelled with a T, pronounced with a D, according to many, to venerable tradition, the founder of Taoism was a guy named Lao Tzu, a.k.a. Lao Tzu, Lao Tzu, Lao Dan, or Old Master, who wrote his books in a book called the Tao Te Ching in the 5th or early 6th century BC. Modern scholars disagree, and they say based on archaeological evidence, the competing collections of sayings attributed to Lao Tzu began to be written down probably in the second half of the 5th century BC. They grew, they competed for attention, and gradually became to be consolidated over the following centuries until the canon probably reached a stable form more or less around the mid-3rd century BC. And every single fact about this guy is in dispute, including his name. According to several scholars, he's entirely legendary. And I'm not going to do too much more of a deep dive, but even his single biographical account gives us competing stories, and it admits it doesn't know which is the real, or if there is a real one. Also, his name Lao Dan comes from the Chinese Gautam, which probably comes from Gautama Buddha, which means Lao Tzu is really a clone of the Buddha. And again, scholars. Anyway, let's keep going because we got so much to cover, and I don't want to lose you guys being buried in the weeds. So Sikhism. How many of you have heard of Sikhism? It's of course you're atheists. Of course you've heard of it. Yeah. Sikhism, believe it or not, has only been around about 500 years. It's a Johnny-come-lately compared to most ancient world religions. And to be honest, when I started this project, I thought if anyone's going to be the exception to the rule, it's going to be these guys. Because, 500 years. And as it turns out, their founder figure, Guru Nanak, was said to have lived in 1469 to 1539. He's the first in a line of 10 Jamansakis, of 10 gurus. And everything we know about this guy comes from these stories called Jamansakis, or birth stories. Not just of the first guy, Guru Nanak, but all the 10. And he does things like goes into a river and comes out 3 days later. He has a conversation with a talking fish. He's all these fantastical supernatural elements appear in his story. And they come in many versions, many of which contradict each other. Some have clearly been tinkered with to beef up the role of this disciple or that. And they don't seem to appear until 50 to 80 years after his death. And they come in more during the 17th, 18th, and even the early 19th century. Now, Sikhs hold that their scripture was written prominently by Nanak and the first 6 gurus of their 10, but we would be forgiven for thinking that the religion actually starts about midway in that line with guru number 5, because that's when their scriptures start to appear. And everything about the guys gets increasingly dodgy as you go back to square one. And their scripture itself doesn't even actually appear until 1604. And the final version of it doesn't appear for a century after that. Okay, Confucianism. I should have shoved him in with the other Chinese because Confucius, or Master Kong, aka Kong Fu Tzu, Kong Fu Tzi, which may just mean, like Lao Tzu, may just mean old master. And again, shock of it all, Confucius may just also be another clone of Buddha. The Analects attributed him were actually composed by followers of his school of philosophy sometime during the Warring States period, and they reached their final form during the Han Dynasty, around 200 BC to 220 AD. And in fact, his philosophy seems to be the basis that the Han Dynasty built itself on. All right, Jains. How many of you have heard of Jains? Because they're fairly obscure as well. Of course you do. Of course you do. Now, Jainism claims that Rabishanatha, the first of its 24 founding Jain Tirantankas, meaning teachers, was born in the city of Ayodhya in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh in the year, let me just check my notes, millions and millions of years BCE. He lived for 8.2 million years. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. He lived for 8 million Purva years. And as we all know, a Purva year is 8.4 million years in Western reckoning. That's not right either. 8 million years squared in Western reckoning. So let me just do a little math here. So that is 70 trillion, 560 billion. So that times 8.2 million. Oh, I broke the internet trying to find that out. Okay. So anyway, getting back to the founder figure, fun fact, he was also 4,950 feet tall. Now, skipping forward just a little bit to the 9th century BC, their 23rd Tirthankar was named Parshvanatha. He was born in the city of Varanasi in the Ganges River. He's a mere 13.5 feet tall, and he lives for about 100 years, just a mere 100 years. Now, despite this impressive, maybe we should stick with incredible pedigree, observers could be forgiven for suspecting that the religion actually started with the final and 24th Tirthankar, a guy named Mahavira, supposedly born right around the same time as Buddha. And in fact, all these traditions about Mahavira are also shared by Buddha. So it's kind of hard to tell where one starts and one the other ends, starts and stops. Unfortunately for Mahavira, his teachings were also transmitted orally by Jain monks and were all gradually lost. And the first written versions don't arrive until the 1st century CE, or AD, if you will, at least according to one branch of Jainism, which is disputed by rival factions. Now, that said, Jains can grow up to be wonderful atheists. And that slide is much more funnier when Hemant Mehta is in the audience with you. But if this is friendly atheist Hemant Mehta. Great guy, former Jain. Okay, well, almost done here. Almost done. Shinto and Hinduism are considered two of the oldest religions in the world. That may not be true, but in any case, Hinduism is considered a fusion of multiple Indian cultures over millennia. So, ironically enough, it turns out Hinduism is not a thing, and it's one of the newest religions because it's composed of all these other ancient religions. And Shintoism derived from the beliefs and practice of prehistoric Japan. So for neither of these traditions is there a single founder figure. We could get into, I'm glad I threw that slide in there because I want to quickly touch on the religion Zoroastrianism. This came out of ancient Persia, and one of the many jaw-dropping things that I learned in the course of this project, writing these 3 books, is that it turns out that Zoroaster, that religion, emerged in the Iranian steppes and northwestern India, that it sprung down that area. It turns out it's not the oldest religion in the world, but we've known it's the granddaddy of all the Abrahamic religions. We simply would not have Judaism if it had not been for Zoroastrianism, and we would not have Christianity or Islam either because the borrowings are just right there. But it turns out it's the mitochondrial Eve for all of our major world religions, East and West, because as it turns out, when this Proto-Zoroastrian movement moved into that area, the Veda religion gave rise to early Brahmanism, which gave rise to Hinduism, and in reaction to that, early Buddhism was a reaction to Vedic religion. So it's distinctly, there's this wishbone coming out from that time. Okay, I'm going to skip right there. There's others we could talk about, but no one's going to be shocked that these are all made up bullshit. And it's fun to know that people figures like Aesop and Homer and Isaiah, writing literary figures, are also turn out to be conflations of multiple people over centuries. And yeah, et cetera. Robin Hood, William Tell, King Arthur, all of these guys seem to be completely imaginary. Why are we not moving anymore? It's frozen up, I think. We broke the internet. Back and forward, is that it? Oh, there we go. And it's still going on strong today. Whoops, let's go back. It was just a smidge. Yeah, not only is Santa Claus made up, but even St. Nicholas, who the real Santa Claus he's supposedly based on, is also completely made up. And like I said, there's still yahoos creating things today. And you could say, same thing with Mormonism. The prophet Mormon never existed. The angel Moroni never existed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I get how Jesus myth theory can be a hard pill for swallow, even for atheists, skeptics, and believers alike. But its acceptance of Jesus being a myth has been growing exponentially in recent years. When I wrote Nailed in 2010, the biggest surprise was not that Christians hated it, but that atheists would say, oh, no, there was definitely a Jesus. He just wasn't Son of God. So when I wrote Jesus Mything in Action in response, just pointing out, well, maybe not, the response I would get more often was, oh yeah, I never thought there was a Jesus. And in that 7 years, that's the change in But all that said, when we look at all these major world religions, the takeaway for me seems to be that it's not only not a crazy idea that Jesus could be mythical. It's not just Jesus. They all seem to be, so much so that it seems to be the norm for major world religions to start with a purely imaginary founder figure. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, do we have time for questions? Yes, okay. Who wants to go first? Okay, over here. And I was just so afraid you were going to knock my coffee off there the whole time.
You and me both. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Was there a question?
Hi there.
Hey.
You mentioned early on that Bart Ehrman eviscerates a lot of these positions, but he still holds to not a mythicist position, but like a historical Jesus position. Yeah. I was just curious if there's a particular point or points where he hangs his hat on for why Jesus would be a real person rather than a myth.
Yeah, his idea, and again, there's nothing improbable about it, is that Jesus was just another failed apocalyptic prophet. And as historical Jesus reconstructions go, that's not the craziest one we've ever heard. The problem is all these historical recreations, even he says, you know what, we all have a problem, and it's like, none of them explain why the Romans would give a rat's ass about somebody like Jesus. Nothing in his trial and execution makes sense historically at all. if he really did do blasphemy, and nothing he does in the Bible is blasphemy. It wasn't blasphemous to call yourself the Messiah. It didn't mean you were comparing yourself to God until later that happened. In the book of John, that's happening, and for some reason, he's not stoned for blasphemy there, even though he is declaring blasphemy. So none of it makes sense historically at all, but all of it makes sense, even the crazy parts, as allegories. And everything we think we know about Jesus ultimately is dependent on those 4 books we call the Gospels. But all 4 of the Gospels are ultimately dependent on the first Gospel, Mark's Gospel, the smallest, shortest, most low-rent, no-frills Gospel we have. And clearly Matthew and Mark are taking his Gospel and improving on it, making it their gospel. None of them are setting out to write the gospel according to me, the gospel according to this guy. They all are setting out to write the one true gospel. And so Luke starts his gospel by saying, there's so many people writing gospels now, it seemed to me a good idea that I should go investigate the story as it's come down to our generation and get the real deal. And then he steals from Mark and Matthew for the most part. And when he's not in lockstep with them, he's just going off in a completely incompatible direction. John comes later still. He doesn't even try to match up with them at all. He just puts in what he likes, when he likes it, why he likes it. And Mark's Jesus and John's Jesus could not be more polar opposite. Mark's Jesus is just a human guy right from the get-go, born on earth. God likes him a lot because he's super obedient, so he adopts him as his son. And since he passes all through the tests, when he's dead and raised up on the 3rd day, he gets promoted to Lord. He's Lord right out of the box. He might as well be wearing it on his shirt, saying, I am God, and doesn't care who knows it. And for some reason, no one picks up stones and stones him for blasphemy, which is how Jesus would have died if he'd really committed blasphemy. If you go into Nailed and Jesus, Myth, and Actions, I break down how his trial and execution just makes no sense whatsoever historically. Makes perfect sense allegorically, point by point by point by point. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to get to David's question here real quick, but
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Does Paul exist at all in Roman record keeping?
Oh, it's funny because in the book of Acts, the author of the book of Acts, who's also the same author as the book of Luke, loves to name drop first century celebrities. And so Paul's constantly rubbing shoulders with these famous celebrity couples and these guy, and he wants to be a big tent, so he's like, I'll bring in this beloved Rabbi Gamaliel, that'll bring in the Jews, and I'll bring this bit, that'll bring in the Gentiles. But the thing is, historians like Flavius Josephus knew these guys, so it's like, if they really did have run-ins with it, there's probably, that would have made a mention in Josephus's book. So that's one of the many reasons we know that the book of Acts is stealing from Josephus and not the other way around. Not the only reason, but that's a very compelling one.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Many questions. I'll try to keep it down to one. Regarding Judaism, my understanding of the scholarship is that modern Judaism seems to have formed during and after the Babylonian exile around the 5th or 6th century.
And that's been steady for a while. They said, well, it used to be this, but that's what's fading away now. But that's been the holding. Well, it had to have happened like either during the exile or right after the exile. And it wasn't until literally 3 years ago that we're like, wait a second, it couldn't possibly be that old. It has to be 3rd century.
Were the Jews polytheists all that time?
And the Jews were polytheistic all that time. In fact, in book 1 or book 2, it's in book 1, the gods of monotheism. I talk about all the different gods that they had. And there are even different versions of Yahweh. There was Yahweh of here, Yahweh of there. Yahweh seems to be a southern Midianite god originally, one of many. And El, the supreme Canaanite god, Baal, the war god, storm god, and Yahweh, their identities and their attributes keep getting mixed up with each other so that it's hard to tell where they start and stop. Just like on the Buddhist side with Buddha and all those other spin-off religions.
All right.
Are we talking about Mahavira or are we talking about Siddhartha Gautama? They're saying the same things about them.
All right. You will be available maybe for a little while
I would love to.
for
And if
questions.
if we're going out to lunch afterwards, I'd be happy to answer more questions then.
Very
Yeah,
good,
absolutely.
very good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And we also need to thank, there's several folks in our audience here who kind of helped facilitate his visit. So thank you to them for contributing and putting that effort together. So
Yeah,
we will.
thanks very much.
David, thank you so much again.
Appreciate
So-
it. Thank you so much. All right. I'll leave it to it.
All right. Kansas City Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit run solely on donations and volunteers. If you like the topic and music today, please consider donating through kcoasis.org, donate, or by Venmo. The recurring monthly donations are the most helpful for planning purposes. Also, we're a completely volunteer-run organization. Everyone is a volunteer, so if you could help us tidy up a little bit. I know you probably think they pay me a lot to be such a fabulous MC, but I do this for free. I do, you know. So yeah, help us out cleaning up. Thank you very much. All right, and you can also join us for lunch after Oasis in the Crown Center food court. Choose your lunch in one of the many restaurants, and we will push several tables together and continue the conversation. So thank you for coming out. We enjoyed having you. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's right. There it is. That's what I was looking for. I'm still learning. Before you, help us clean up the area, and then there's one more here. Next week, our featured speaker is Alex Hedke and Nathan Duncurley on effective altruism, where head meets heart. And our musical guest is Dandelion Lakewood. That ought to be interesting, so yeah. And we want to thank our musical guests today, David and Amy, for the presentation. It was very, very good. So, all right. See ya.